Welcome back to Stories Sustain Us, the podcast where we explore the remarkable journeys of those making a lasting impact on our world. I'm your host, Stephen Schauer, and as the holiday season is upon us, I'm taking this time to revisit some of the most impactful episodes from Season 1. Today we're bringing back Season 1, Episode 13, featuring my dear friend and truly inspiring guest, Roy Hudgens. This episode originally aired on September 17th, 2024, and I'm thrilled to share it with you again. And just so you know, I'm currently working on new shows for Season 2 of Stories Sustain Us, which will be released in January. Roy is an interior designer, a passionate tennis player, and a survivor of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, having lived with HIV for an incredible 39 years. His journey is one of resilience, hope, and an unshakable zest for life. During the height of the AIDS pandemic, Roy faced overwhelming stigma and a lack of medical resources. Yet he found the strength and the support of the HIV/AIDS community and compassionate caregivers. When this episode first aired, we explored the holistic impact of living with HIV/AIDS on mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being, and how Roy's daily mindfulness practices, fitness routines, and deep appreciation for life's simple pleasures have helped him thrive. Since then, I'm happy to report that Roy continues to live his best life in Los Angeles, inspiring everyone he meets. He still encourages us all to slow down, be present, and go barefoot in the grass as often as possible. A simple yet profound reminder of the joy in connecting with the present moment. This episode also ties directly to global sustainability. Through the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Goal 3, there's a target to end the HIV/AIDS pandemic by 2030. Roy's story is a powerful testament to what's possible when resilience, advocacy, and community come together to create change. Whether you're revisiting this episode or hearing it for the first time, I hope you find Roy's story as inspiring as I do. So sit back, relax, and join me as we dive into this encore presentation of Roy Hudgens' incredible journey on Stories Sustain Us, where we are inspiring action through the power of storytelling. All right. Well, Roy, welcome to Stories Sustain Us. How you doing, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, just did the introduction, so everybody's starting to get to know you. But thank you for kind of joining me on I don't know, kind of what I'm seeing as a special episode kind of things. I'm talking to you about your personal life experience with what I think is a very important topic, and it's not necessarily, talking to a researcher or a scientist or someone who's working in a field. I'm talking to someone who's lived on the front lines of the AIDS crisis the AIDS pandemic that the world is still in. 40 years later or so, we're still in this pandemic. So I appreciate you very much, sharing your personal journey and story as part of this kind of episode of Stories Sustain Us. So thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and congratulations on your podcast.
Yeah, I'm having fun with it. So getting to chat with old friends like you and new people all around the world. It's been a blast. So it's been fun. So thank you. Appreciate it. So so we're going to jump into your story, Roy. Tell me Roy's story. How you doing? What's childhood like, and what's life been like for you?
Well, first of all, I'm great. Thank you. Living in LA, standing in my kitchen with a view of the Hollywood Hills in my humble little apartment, and I'm loving life. So that's who I am right now.
That's a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, I love it here. Well, you're in the same climate, so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me and talking about the AIDS epidemic and the current state and the future of it. But I have been HIV positive for 29 years, I think. I think it's 29 or 30. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But yeah, so I'm a military brat. I'm number 6 of 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl. And we moved almost twice a year. We lived in 22 different states, and I was born in Turkey. So, yeah, and I guess it was, I don't know, remember when, but I definitely knew I was different. special.
Yeah.
And it was not okay to be gay. And my family were military.
Yeah.
And so there was just that. But I guess I think I was 19 years old. I went to a gay bar and I saw this guy and he looked like Ricky Ricardo and he had slick back hair and he was very handsome
Yeah.
and he came up and said hi to me and I was like, no way. Anyways,
And
that's kind of how
this
it happened.
was where was this?
San Antonio at the
San
Paper
Antonio.
Moon.
Yeah.
First thought was someone like that would never like me. Next thing you know, he's like, hello. So we never left each other's side until
Yeah.
until he died of AIDS 10 years later from
Yeah.
when we met. But
When did you said you were 19? When
he
was
died
that?
in he died in 1995.
95. So you met in the mid
No,
80s?
yeah, I was 19 in 86, 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we started a life together and it was it's just tough back then to be out or um but what happened was we made a successful business and we were rocking along and our nieces and nephews spent holidays at our home, so there was a little bit of like, don't talk about it, but everyone loved to be around us.
Yeah. Both families, it was kind of a
Yeah,
hush
yeah,
secret. Yeah.
yeah, there's a little bit.
Yeah, that's hard, man.
But so one day he got sick. He got a super high temperature and he his doctor tested him and he had full-blown AIDS.
Yeah.
And I tested positive for AIDS. And so we didn't know anything. Like
And
nobody.
when was this? It was
This
early
was like
90s at this point?
early '90s, early '90s.
Yeah.
We had no idea. Like I didn't
Yeah.
know you could drink a Coke after someone with AIDS. Like I had no idea.
Yeah.
And but I will say our families rallied around us. But so here's the thing. Back then there was no drugs for it until AZT came out.
Yeah.
And like for example, so what it was like was this. Rico got everything you could get without an immune system. He got a parasite in his brain. He went completely blind. He had his bones were rotting, and they would send him home from the hospital with open wounds to heal, with 6 feet of packing that I had to dress him with.
Wow.
They sent a blind lady over to teach us how to be blind. And it was just one thing after another.
Yeah.
Early on, when we were first diagnosed, I was the best man at my brother's wedding, and my sister was coming to get Rico and I to take us to Louisiana, but I had a tooth that needed pulled, and she called around to dentists in San Antonio to get my tooth pulled, and um, it took her 14 dentists to find one that would pull my tooth because I
No
was,
one would work on you.
yeah, and so she took me to this dentist. She's holding my arm. We walk in, and the whole staff is lining the walls in full Kim gear. And I remember walking down the hall thinking, I do not belong on. That's the first time I didn't believe I belonged on this planet. And
Yeah.
so that was one of like so many things that trying to be trying to accept that he's dying and I most likely will, and be as kind and loving and supportive at the same time, not being recognized as a human being was traumatic,
No
with
doubt.
stuff that I'm still working on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
doing good. Took a while.
Yeah.
One time he was in the hospital with that surgery that he had, and I was in there waiting for him to wake up from the surgery, and this mean ass woman, can we cuss on this?
Yeah, of course.
Anyways,
Say whatever you want.
this nurse came in and
If you're hearing the story, I might say some curse words.
well, she was like, I mean, those horror stories that you hear, she's like, you're not immediate family, get the fuck out of here. She threw me out of the room. Stuff like that. And it was just constant.
Yeah.
Rico's family was very Catholic, and so he wanted to be Catholic and still be gay and go to heaven because he knew he was
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah.
So we took him to this big, giant church. Have the TV saying, I don't want to say it. I'll
Yeah.
say it. It was Cornerstone.
Okay.
We took him
That
there,
is,
right?
yeah, that is
We
a
went
big
there.
kind of mega church
It is,
in
and he
San
wanted to be
Antonio for
saved.
those who don't know, right?
Yeah, and so you have to pay them a check to be dunked in the pool and saved. And so I wrote the check. They took him to dunk him, and the assistant to Pastor Hagee came out and said, "What you boys are doing is a thorn in God's eye. You're going to hell." Like, and I
Haggy
was
directly told you
no,
that?
his
His
minion,
assistant?
his
Yeah.
little deacon. Yeah, and I remember sitting in. I was looking in the locker room, and I was like, it felt like I was walking down the hall as a dentist. Like, what? I just wrote you a check. Like,
Yeah.
are you gonna keep my money?
For,
But I never told Rico that. I didn't.
compassion and, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's
and
yeah.
there's so many stories
I'm
like
sorry,
that.
Roy.
Well, there's more to later on now, currently in my life. Like those things were gifts, and it took me a long time and a lot of trauma to get to where I'm at with that. But
Yeah.
it's just food for my ego for me to be like a victim. So
Sure.
there's
I
a whole other
appreciate,
story
yeah.
into that. But at the time, I
Yeah.
felt like I didn't belong here. I wasn't allowed.
Yeah.
And so you kept your head down and just tried to
Well, you
stay
were
invisible.
ostracized. I mean, you
Yeah.
to say the least. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, so that feeling of not belonging, that was intentional. I mean, that was the
Right.
being told something like that. That is not kindness. That's not compassion. That is, the opposite of that. So my heart
Yeah.
goes out to you. I know some of these stories because you and I know each other, but it's
Hmm.
still, thank you for your vulnerability and honesty and
Sure.
sharing with some of those hard, tragic stories. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
please go
Yeah.
go
It was
on.
a.
Where do you want to pick up?
Well, it
I
was a
guess.
difference. Well, here's the thing
Yeah.
about sustainability and about medications and what we can do to keep people from dying. And so
Yeah.
back then it was different. Like he was given AZT. And so AZT was described to us by our doctor as if you have a flower bed, and in that flower bed is a little weed, and you take this gigantic weed eater to get that weed, you mutilate a bunch of
You're
flowers.
gonna mow
That's
everything
what
else down.
that's what
Yeah.
AZT was. It was like coming through. And
Yeah.
so when the cocktail finally came out, the combination, it was like a little handheld weed eater. And so Rico
Yeah.
was short 8 months before the cocktail came out before he died.
Mm,
That's why I'm alive.
mm,
But before that, he was on a lot of test drugs. We were on everything possible. Like there's a he had thrush, which was like a foaming of the mouth, and
mm-hmm.
he's the reason that there is a um, yeast infections for women. They take itraconazole and itraconazole. He was the reason they have that drug. He was one of the people that was tested. So there's a lot of things that came out. Like I take a pill once a day to that gives me the fullness of life. I
Mm-hmm.
play tennis. I ride my bike to work. I play big boy tennis. I hit with the college kids. It's because of that little pill that I got to take because of people like Rico that, you know,
Yeah.
took. So yeah, that's what it
Did you
was like.
find that the medical community, was obviously with the dentist experience didn't sound at all that helpful, but were you finding more help amongst the MDs and the doctors or was it kind of
No,
some didn't
no.
know what to do with you because it was still so novel
It,
and
yeah,
scary, I'm sure for everybody, but or how was your experience obviously testing all of these things and going through all of that? Was there any compassion in that process, or were you just kind of like,
yes,
here, try this and call
no,
me later? Or what?
yes.
Yeah.
It was inside the community of doctors and nurses that were HIV and AIDS doctors and
Yeah.
nurses in the clinics. Amazing. I mean, you're in it's a different time. You're sitting in the waiting room with a bunch of people that they're dying. They have
Yeah.
lesions and they're wasting, and you're like, oh my God, like this is what I have to look forward to. So it was just awful. was an awful, awful experience. I remember taking Rico one time to so many doctor's appointments. And one time I was taking him down to the car and he just started bawling. And I like, what's wrong? And he's like, I don't want to go to the waiting room. It's just so awful. Yeah. So, but yes, the nurses and doctors were amazing. They were like touching you. They would touch you and love you. And they weren't afraid of getting AIDS by being next to you. So a huge compassion and love from the AIDS Foundation, the clinics, the regular hospitals. If it wasn't an AIDS ward, they were awful. Well, they were scared.
They were scared,
just like the dentist office. They were scared.
Right.
You know, they did say yes, and he pulled my tooth.
Yeah.
There's plastic on the wall, but he pulled that fucker. So
wow.
So here I am. 19-ish when I was infected.
Yeah.
And I'm 58. And so, well, 58 and a half. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. It was, so with that, I was thinking about what that does to people like me that are in their 50s or 60s that survived the AIDS epidemic. I'm healthy. I somehow got into tennis right about 1999, and I just ran for 20 years, 25 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm fit. And because the AIDS virus takes a toll on you. When I was taking medications, the cocktail, it would, you have to keep testing your T cells back then because the virus mutates and the medication is no longer effective, so you have to switch up the cocktail. There were like 12 sequences of the cocktail that they could switch it around to trick the virus. I had gone to the last one. Like I was, it would be okay for a year or two, and then my T cells would drop, and it's like, we got to switch the cocktail up. And so I remember one time my doctor's like, this is the last combination for you. Okay. And then
so how long did that go on?
Until I got the single pill, which was probably maybe 10 years ago ish.
So almost 20 years of
I was racing
changing
against the clock.
the cocktails, constantly test. How often were you testing?
So at the beginning,
quarterly, every other year.
Oh, no.
I mean, every 6 months, every year. How often were you testing?
Like in the beginning, weekly.
Oh,
then every 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and then got to a year, and now it's a year. I just got my test like the other day, and it's 100% undetectable. Like it's not there. It's there, but it's not there.
Sure.
So, but back then we couldn't eat raw eggs. You couldn't eat, like I couldn't have Caesar dressing, because you can't afford to get sick when you have no immune system or a weak immune system.
Oh wow!
Like tuberculosis is like the #1 killer of people living with AIDS, because their immune system is so low.
I wouldn't have never thought about raw eggs or Caesar dressing or other things that could attack your immune system, your weakened body. Wow.
I remember I was with my friends. We were in Austin at this concert, and this guy I didn't date like at all. I was so traumatized by the whole thing. I went on a couple of dates.
Passing.
It was tough.
Yeah.
But I went on a date with this guy, and I went over. We were going to hang out, and I was going to stay in Austin. I had my current drug. We had to have refrigerated. I was like, tell my friend, I'm like, how do I fucking tell this guy, hey, I got to put my AIDS medicine in your fridge. Yeah, that's what it's like.
Yeah. Thank you again for kind of pulling back the curtain and sharing some of the, like, again, the recognizing some of the privilege of my life of not knowing what that's like, and again, not thinking for a minute like, oh, you can't have eggs. That never.
Sunburns also. Sunburns will fuck you up if your immune system's. I didn't know that until I knew it.
Yeah.
Touch me.
Yeah. So did you have scares along the way during that period?
I did. I
your
remember
own personal kind of moments of
illness.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're sober.
Yes.
I'm sober. In
Yes.
1999, I got sober. Rico died in 1995. And
Yeah.
I went to the doctor, and she's like, "Well, you have the same strands of the virus in you, so you're gonna go blind, get a parasite in your brain, and you'll be probably dead in a year." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I just went and got high
Yeah.
until 1999,
Yeah.
and I was alive. I got sober, at the same place I think you did at Club 12.
Yeah, that is
Um,
where I got sober. That's actually where I think I met you the first time,
yeah.
a few years into my sobriety journey.
So I got sober. I had 5 T cells. I was very sick. I ended up in the hospital, and I had PCP pneumonia, which is one of the it's called the ARC, age-related complications,
Yeah.
and you get like the lesions or pneumonia or brain stuff, parasite in your brain, like anything. Anyone
Yeah.
can get them without an immune system, and so I was in the ARC, which is usually see ya,
Yeah.
and again they're like, "You have a year to live." But I was in the isolation ward at University Hospital,
Hmm.
and I was masked, or no, I was in the isolation ward, and then all of a sudden I hear all this noise. It was Joe McFadden and like 10 people from the club. They came in like, "We're gonna have a meeting in your room," and they all were wearing masks because I was the one that was just
Yeah, you were
needing
the one at
protection.
risk, right?
And
Right.
Joe was like, "What the fuck?" He took a mask and put it on me, and they all took off all their masks. It's so great, but Joe.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I had a couple of times where I was sick. Before I got sober in 1999, I remember getting a scratch and it not healing, fingernails not growing, kind of feeling like I was just rotting. And
Yeah.
then when I got sober and went to the doctor, I had like 5 T cells, so I was dying,
You were.
but I
Yeah.
was sane.
Jeez Louise. Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank
So
thank you also for your vulnerability of telling that part of your story. I think, I shared a few episodes ago that I'm in recovery, and it's a freaking miracle. And, you know, I'm grateful for every moment of it, and wouldn't have met, beautiful people like you otherwise as well. So, yeah. So you eventually get through the, 18, 20 years of having to do the cocktail, and,
and
2010,
then
2014, somewhere in there, you get to the single
yeah,
dose.
I
Tell me
think
what's that like?
Truvada came out for us that were infected, that were
Yeah.
positive, with a cocktail, and now it's the one that you take if you're not infected to keep you from getting AIDS. It's so crazy. And
Yeah.
now I take Biktarvy, and so it's one pill. But see, it's not just the Biktarvy. It's like it's mental, it's physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual.
Yeah.
Like I know people same length of time. I know people that didn't make it, but I know people with the same length of time living with HIV and AIDS that look sickly and old because one, it eats at your muscles, and like you have to try. You
Yeah.
have to try to stay
You
ahead
have
of
to
it.
work every day. Yeah.
Yeah, and so fortunately I just was hiding on the tennis court.
Yeah.
I would only play singles, but I played like 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
So I was isolating on the tennis court, which helped me physically.
Yeah.
So I'm fit and healthy because I did a lot of fitness stuff. Just, you know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that aren't, and I'm grateful that I stayed ahead of the disease, because once you get weak, it's gonna it affects you. There's so many people that are still dying from it,
Yeah.
and you just don't think about it because it's not in the news.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I saw a report, I mentioned to you, and at the introduction talked about that new report that came out from UNAIDS. This is, we're mid-September now with this release, but the report came out in middle of July a few months ago, and a horrible statistic of every minute somewhere around the globe there's someone dying of AIDS related complications. So there's miracle stories such as yours, but there's certainly, pretty dramatic inequalities in other places around the world. And in those places, there's inequalities between who has access, men or women, or, what type of, work they do, if they're in the sex trade or in some of these places. I mean, it's just, there's still a lot that we collectively as humanity needs to do, in my opinion, to help, get this pandemic eradicated, if certainly not more manageable around the world, like you're managing your disease. So,
I wish we could see some component of the medication, but like with early detection, with like meditation, mindfulness. That's what changed for me. Yes, I take that pill every day and I'm grateful for it. I'm not going to not take it.
Yeah.
But the quality of my life has gotten so much better learning how to meditate, learning how to be of service.
Yeah.
It pays so heavy when you practice mindfulness, service. Yeah. Especially for those that have been traumatized. Like that stuff, I thought it was fine. I was living my life. Everything was great. And then it wasn't. I had a wise friend that said, Roy, everything buried is alive and growing and it's going to come out someday. Just not sure when or where. It came out.
Yeah.
So, I've done all the Eckhart Tolle, Science of Mind, Emmett Fox, Sadhguru. I'm just got my completion, my Isha. The one thing for me that's changed me the most, was being of service and recovery. And I'm currently doing the work with Byron Katie. Fortunately, she lives in California, and so I went to a retreat. It's just 4 questions, but all it does is it's like hand surgery versus putting cream on your hand. Like you question your thoughts. Is it true? You absolutely know it's true. Who would you be without that thought? How do you treat yourself and others when you believe that thought? What addictions do you participate in? And then you turn it around. So I'll give you a little quick example.
Yeah, please.
So I actually went to Ojai because my boyfriend Kent, he's like really involved in Byron Katie, and I'm like, okay, I'll go. So we go, and there's a couple hundred people at these events. I didn't know, but at the end of each event, she pulls someone from the audience and puts them on stage, and she does the work with you. And she pulled me, she picked me.
Right on.
So I was doing the work on my form, I was doing the work on, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but when Rico and I were together, there were family members that I felt didn't treat me right, and I felt like they wanted me to die and not him, and I carried that with me, just I don't know if it was true, but that's what my brain told me. So she had me do the work on that, and it took she let me come to my own answers without her putting words in my mouth. And it turned out it wasn't true. And she was a beautiful mother to him and me. Yeah. And she managed to bring this large Hispanic Catholic family into our home and let him be Catholic and gay and die of AIDS, believing he would go to heaven.
Yeah.
She gave that to him.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's friggin' beautiful, man. I mean, thank you for sharing that. I'm tearing up with you, man.
I didn't know that. It came out on stage. I'm like, holy fuck. And so I sent her a card and thanked her. And so that's what the work is doing for me. You question your thoughts, ask them if they're true, turn it around, and shabam.
Yeah.
It's the same with anyone. I had a sponsor that would tell me the same thing in different words. So whatever spirituality, guru, process, grass under your feet, whatever gets you there, that's the mana of life, including the medication.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take your meds.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So so on a daily basis, you take your pill, And
I
it sounds
do.
like on a daily basis, you do your mindfulness meditation routines, you do your exercise, your
Right.
physical fit, you
Which
eat
includes
well.
riding my bike to work and taking my socks and shoes off in the grass whenever I can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
feeling the earth
Mm-hmm.
underneath you. Yeah, that's important. I like doing that too when I can. I don't do that as often as you. Certainly not as often as I would
I
like. But
never did
it just feels
before.
good when you do it, right? You just like
Yeah.
connected. You feel connected to something bigger than yourself when you're touching the earth. At least for
Mm-hmm.
me, I do a lot of hiking here in the Pacific Northwest, and I am literally a tree hugger. When I'm in the middle of
It's
the woods, I
crazy.
will. There's these giant, amazing, beautiful trees. I will just go put my hands on it, and sometimes I'll hug it, but I'll just touch it. I'll just hold it, just
Yeah.
feel it. And there's like, it's just something. You're just connected to something that you're connected to the earth. You're connected
Yeah.
to life, a life force. I think it's beautiful. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you do all these things every day to kind of maintain your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual
Right.
well-being. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say. It's a daily deal. You don't get vacations from taking care of yourself because just like our sobriety, we don't get to take vacation from that because
Right.
that mental illness is still there and ready to
Yeah.
flare back up. You have to take all these other kind of daily steps to maintain your physical health as well
Mm-hmm.
because of the virus that's in your body. Is that kind of what I'm hearing
Yeah.
correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which taking in a hole is leaving you as a pretty healthy 58-year-old man.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get the Rona for 2 years and made fun of all my friends. And then I got it. I couldn't even see. I was so sick. But yeah, so I'm pretty
Yeah.
healthy. I got the Rona though.
Yeah. So things like that, though, common colds,
If
the
you're
coronavirus, flu, are you still at a heightened risk, or because
so
your T cells are doing so well and the medication has it as barely acknowledgeable, you're able to maintain your health through those types of illnesses? Like I got the coronavirus as well, a year and a half ago, and it knocked me out for a week. I mean, I was down and out for a week. But I also wasn't too worried that I wasn't going to recover. I mean, so
sure.
do you face those types of things differently?
Well, so first of all, it's not T cells anymore. Somewhere along the way, 10, 15, 20, I don't know when it shifted, but now they base it on your viral load.
Okay.
So anything under 200 is like undetectable or is like good. And then like I am zero, I'm undetectable. And so it used to be T cells, but now it's like your viral load. How many viruses are in your body? And so like someone who's like full blown AIDS has hundreds of thousands of viral load.
Okay.
So I don't know if I know the answer to that because I'm always cautious. I think I'm okay because I'm undetectable, but my doctor says, well, it's there, but it's not there. So basically, they can't get a reading on it, and I'm not a doctor, but they
Right.
can't see it. They can't get a reading on it, so it's undetectable. So I don't know if I get some crazy illness that I'm not going to recover. I think I'm normal,
Yeah.
but yeah. So I mean, I've gotten colds and stuff, so I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
Right on. Well, so where do we go from here, Roy? I mean, what's life like for you now in Los Angeles? From what I know of it, it sounds like you're living a pretty amazing life. So, I mean, is that what's happening?
Yeah, yes, was working on,
Yeah.
recovery and the crazies, but yes, so I spent a lot of my life, one in shame, but also like waiting
Yeah.
for it to happen. Wait, I have this cute apartment. It's a studio. It's like adorable, and I have a great view. I ride my bike to work, but I had for a while there, I was seeing myself in a house with Kent and a yard and dogs and I was like living in that house, and I was not being happy where I'm at. And
Yeah.
so I decided, I did some work on it, and I was like, wait, why don't I just start living where I'm at and see how that goes? And so I been started doing puzzles and like I'm hanging some pots and pans over the stove, like I live here, like I'm gonna live here forever. It helps me stay present. And so, when you do that, maybe my house is around the corner. So, but I do love it here. I'm an interior designer. I actually have a huge penthouse project in Texas I've been working on for 2 years, so I go back there like, often. And then I design custom saunas for the celebrities and sell hot tubs here. So yeah, I have a good life. I have a great
Yeah.
schedule. Um, yeah, I get to meet customers and give service, and I'm I skip when I walk. Sometimes it's like bananas. So there's something about LA. When I got here, it was like a living treatment center. They have 30-foot hedges. Like everything in Texas is the succulents are fake. They're real here because it's like tropical,
Yeah.
subtropical. So like even the crappy areas of town have amazing landscaping because it's like an island.
Yeah.
So that helps. Like you said when you were hiking, like there's so many beautiful plants and trees that everywhere you walk. Yeah, I feel like I'm on vacation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's kind of how I feel living here and walking the neighborhood. It's a very walkable
well,
neighborhood, and it's just full of beautiful flowers that bloom all year round, most part, except for winter, but it's still just
yeah,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Love it.
So yeah, I'm in love also.
Nice.
Yeah,
That is a good
didn't
thing.
didn't. Oh my God. Um, Never was I ever gonna risk opening my heart up. Uh,
Yeah.
it just shut down on its own, a concrete wall over it. I was like, I didn't even
Yeah.
try. And Rico had died at Christmas, and
Yeah.
I had the house all decorated in advance for him, and he never came home from the hospital, and I never
Mm.
celebrated Christmas again. But it wasn't even intentional. I just deleted it. And so I put my first Christmas tree up 28 years last year.
Yeah. I remember you sent me
Uh,
the pictures of it. I was so happy for you. I was like, that's just
it's
so
amazing.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right on.
So,
Well, and I'm happy for you that you're, dipping your toe back into the relationship pool, and that's
yeah,
important, right? I mean,
yeah.
we're social creatures. We're supposed to be, with other people and in connection and relationship. So that's a testament to, like you said, all the work you've done on
Yeah,
addressing some of those traumatic things that have happened to you in your life. So you are, for me, I appreciate, we share gratitudes almost every day. That's one of our, ways that we're connected and get to know what's going on with each other's life. Is we'll send a little text to each other about what we're grateful for today, and I always appreciate reading what you share, because it's,
thank you.
I find you to be just an amazing human being and very inspirational.
Thank you.
Couldn't be more grateful to know you, call you a friend.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You started that. Do you remember? I was
I
struggling in San
yeah.
Antonio 7 years ago,
Yeah.
6 years ago, and you called me and said, "So this is what you're going to do. You're going to start making a gratitude list every day, and you're going to send it to me. Oh, and you're going to meet me for lunch at the Pearl on Tuesday." I was like,
Yeah.
"Yes, sir." And so we've been doing it almost every day.
Yeah, yeah, it helps me out. I'm glad it
Yeah.
helps you out, but it helps me out too. So gratitude's a superpower, man. So, well, Roy, what is there anything else that you want to touch on with regards to your personal story? You've shared a lot, and I'm so grateful for how open and honest you've been with your experience with HIV/AIDS, and I'm immensely grateful for what you've shared today. Is there anything else that's kind of we'll call it a burning desire for those who are familiar with what that term is?
No, just to any chance anyone can have the opportunity to love someone just the way they are, like um like the bottom is the top of, if you're if you're at your worst and you're feeling like crap and ungrateful, like you have to have that to get to the top. So I don't know, I'm really big on just embracing the underdog. So
Yeah.
love the nerds. I'm gonna marry one.
Can't wait to meet him. So I appreciate there was a little bit of a call to action there, which I so appreciate. Love everyone, love everybody where they are, love people for who they are, where they are. In the context of this particular episode about the AIDS pandemic, is there anything, any call to action that for anybody listening to this podcast or watching the video? I can't imagine, if anybody, any audience member isn't touched by your story. So hopefully they're fired up and inspired to do something to help. What would you ask people to do beyond, which is incredibly powerful, love people where they are? I mean, that is an amazing call to action, but is there anything else that you would ask audience members to do after listening to this? So they shut off the podcast and they go do this. What would that be?
So I don't know how it works, but I do know when the new drugs came out, when I first started working, they were like $20,000 a month if you didn't have insurance. And then they were like $200 a pill. And so the more it worked, the more expensive it got. And so
Wow.
like I know there's so many people that don't have access to it. So I don't know how this works, but I have a suspicion that when there's profits, there's delays. When things are when drug companies are making money to for us to be sick.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how that works, but I know that like the right legislation can take care of that. So I don't know how it works other than getting involved in like whatever it takes to push it along without having these delays in research and distribution based on what companies bottom line is. So there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money in the AIDS epidemic, and so, but I don't know how it works.
So tell your Congress member, tell your senator that federal support resources for AIDS legislation is something that is important to you. That's a call to action people can do is to take a stand, let their elected officials know that this is an important issue that needs financial resources so that everyone can get affordable access to drugs that will keep them alive, right? I mean, this is right.
And there's more. Like, I'm a very proud American, a military family. Like, I am very proud American, but we're one chunk of the globe. So, like, we have to help everyone. There's so many people that are not going to get the drugs. So, we have so much resources. We should be sharing. That's what I'm saying. We should be sharing.
Yeah. I agree.
Like I would
completely
split my pill in half and send it to Africa if I had to. Or wherever.
Right on. Well, we shouldn't have to ask people like you to do that. We should. We are a resource wealthy nation, and to the credit, frankly, of George W. Bush, right? I mean, he did, a couple decades ago when he was in office, lead an effort to do a pretty significant package of support specifically to Africa. So, I mean, it can be done. There's evidence, even by those amongst the conservative leaders of our nation can see the need for kindness and compassion to help other nations. So there's a track record there of it getting done. So we need to keep pushing our legislators and elected officials to keep doing it and do more because there's more to be done.
Yeah, it should always be on the docket. In the queue.
Yeah. And that's the crux of that UNAIDS report is that if we're going to get to eradicating AIDS globally by 2030, the elected leaders of the world, the governments of the world need to step up their promises. They need to follow through with their promises. Promises were made to work towards eradicating the disease by 2030, but it's we're not quite halfway there and the promises are not being kept. So pushing our elected leaders around the world to uphold what they said they would do, and to put the resources and effort into eradicating this disease once and for all.
Beautiful.
So, all right, man. Well, I end every episode. Is there anything else you want to add before I get to the last questions? Is there any other calls to action? There are a few questions. Yes, a few more. Anything else you wanna any other call to actions or anything else you'd like to mention before I hit you with the last questions?
No, thank you. That's
okay. So each episode I end with asking 3 questions of the guest around the topic of hope. So, hope isn't a strategy, right? But without hope, it's hard to get into action to go do the things you need to do. So hope is kind of a foundational prerequisite of doing something, of getting into action. And on these episodes on Stories Sustain Us, and this one in particular, we're talking about a really hard subject. And thank you again so much for your honesty and vulnerability. So, AIDS is hard, right? I mean, it's a difficult subject to talk about. So I want to end on a hopeful note. There's been a lot of hope and a lot of promise just in your story already, but I want to push you a little bit more to find out what you're hopeful about. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, kind of just off the cuff, off top of your head, or what's in your heart. Don't think too long about the answer. Just give the answer. So, and I'm defining hope kind of the way folks who study it define it. And hope is defined as you can have a vision for the future and you feel like you have some agency to help that vision come true. Might not be easy. You might not get there, but you have a vision and you feel you can do something to help it happen. So 3 questions, Roy. First question is, what is your vision for a better future? It could be for you personally or professionally or for the world. What's your vision for a better future?
Living in the moment, nurturing the grass.
Tell me why.
Because I've had success in every area of my life that I've practiced the principles of our program. And it doesn't sustain me. What sustains me is being barefoot in the grass. I drove around San Antonio with 4 jobs, making piles of money, thinking someday I'm going to pull over, take my shoes and socks up, and I never did. I ate in my car, and now in LA, I don't pass grass without stopping and taking my shoes and socks up. So it makes me a better person.
So last question then. So imagine we're living in a future where everybody's following that advice and we're all taking a moment to enjoy a moment of barefooted contact with the grass, with the earth. How does it make you feel? How does that future make you feel?
Hopeful, but yes, hopeful. There's a park near my house, and every evening it's unleashed. Dogs are off leash, running into the hills and living their best life. And I sit there with my trainer, barefoot, and watch all this. And then we do a little body weight workout. And then when they leave, when the sun sets, they take all their dogs. You can feel the ground smiling. I mean, smiling from the doggy love. And that's my higher power. That's what I feel. That's what I see when we're all sitting in the park, barefoot. So hope, yeah.
Awesome. Beautiful. Well, Roy, thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I look forward to catching up with you again soon. But thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story. I'm incredibly grateful to know you as a friend, and I'm incredibly grateful that you were willing to share your very personal story on this program. So thank you, Roy.
You're welcome. I love you, and I'll send you my gratitude list tomorrow.
I love you too, man. You'll get my gratitude list as well. Take care, brother.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me for this special encore of Stories Sustain Us, featuring the remarkable Roy Hudgens. His journey of resilience, joy, and advocacy is a powerful reminder to slow down, stay present, and find beauty in life's simplest moments, like going barefoot in the grass. As we reflect on Roy's story, let's also remember the importance of global efforts to end the HIV/AIDS epidemic and promote health and well-being for all. Stories like Roy's remind us that progress is possible when we come together with compassion and determination. To learn more and find out ways you can get involved, please check out the links in the show notes for the UN Sustainable Development Goals, UN AIDS, and the website for the HIV/AIDS strategy in the United States. I'm so grateful you tuned in to revisit this episode. If you enjoyed it, please share it with someone who might be inspired by Roy's incredible journey. And subscribe, rate, and review Stories Sustain Us on your favorite podcast platform. I really appreciate your support. Stay tuned for more highlights from Season 1 as we celebrate the stories that sustain us this holiday season. Next week, on December 3rd, there will be an encore performance of my conversation with an inspiring young UK-based activist. Her energy and achievements will undoubtedly motivate you to take action. As always, this will be available at storiessustainus.com, wherever you listen to podcasts, and on YouTube. And don't forget, new episodes of Stories Sustain Us are coming in January when Season 2 is launched. Till next time, I'm Stephen Schauer. Please take care of yourself and each other. Take care.